Hello everyone, William here from 222 Productions, and I am here to talk to you about the American Ninja Warrior Season 10 Miami Regional Finals in approximately 20 minutes or less, starting right now. So, this episode, bit of a mix, bit of some mixed feelings in my opinion. Some mixed feelings on this, but let's go down the obstacles a little bit. So, of course, we had the archer steps, and then instead of the flywheels, we had the cannonball drop, which is very interesting. Basically, took the obstacle from Indianapolis. This obstacle ended up being a real killer. One thing they mentioned was that just how surprising the amount of people who failed. I'm looking at the full results right now. 10 people failed this obstacle. That is almost a third. That is just less than a third of the total competitors of the regional final failed the second obstacle, which is pretty crazy when you think about it. So yeah, this was a killer course early on. I think because Cannonball Drop's a very all or nothing obstacle, and the competitors, they didn't have that experience of doing it in the first round, and so I think it messed with people's heads. I think that's sort of the thing that I got from that. Razor's Edge is back, Ring Turn, and then the Slippery Summit. Slippery Summit definitely nerfed because there's more notches. Basically, there's less big jumps required. You can do several small jumps, and you can still skip notches. Basically, it's you got more options, so it's definitely easier in that regard. So that's one of the things that I noticed. Then of course got the warped wall, salmon ladder, and then a new obstacle called the Crazy Clocks. And I really like this obstacle because it seems like an obstacle. It's a very different obstacle. Basically, you got these two handles. You got to grab them. You essentially got to grab them like this, and you gotta go around and turn them like this, and then you got to do a lâché. And I'll say this is that I think this obstacle would have worked better with 3 clocks. I feel like this is one of those obstacles kind of similar to Fallout, where it was restricted by the tank that it was on. Because it had this thing in the middle, this curve in the middle, there's a plexiglass thing in it, so you're trying to grab this little ledge. And I feel like that ledge took out as much people as the clocks themselves did. And the second clock has it's on an angle. I think it was a 5-degree angle. And so that you could see that actually made a difference. And I feel like this would have worked better with either 3 clocks or just having them do a bigger lâché without the thing in the middle. I feel like this was something that was it had a really good idea going on, but because of production reasons, it got a bit nerfed. That's kind of the feeling that I got from this obstacle. And then was the return of the Stair Hopper. I like the Stair Hopper. One thing that I noticed is that on the ascent, not the first gap, so basically got that bottom rung, that's open on both sides, but the second gap going up, there's actually these metal stoppers there, so you could dismount early in that, but it's very hard to slip out through that way, so it was nerfed a little bit this time around. Then of course the spider trap. So we're going to start with Michael Johnson, Ice in His Veins. This was definitely a better course, by the way. Basically, they kind of they reused his story from last time. He ended up going on the Crazy Clocks, which is it's good for him because that means he moves on. Sorry, I really needed that water. And just go through the whole Cannonball thing. The first fast forward was Lindsay Exkelson, who is a good competitor, but went out on the Cannonball drop. Then they showed Ethan Supernet, who went out on the Slippery Summit, and then Callie Alexander went out on the Salmon Ladder, which is, man, that's disappointing. I was hoping you'd do better. And then Drew Henry recently had a baby. I think, was this the one? I didn't write it down. Was this the one whose wife had a baby literally the day after filming last year? That might have been the one. but he went out on the Crazy Clocks. A good run overall. And then with no breaks and no warning, they start showing Jessica Clayton, and I immediately got suspicious because I know that they don't have enough time to show two good runs in a single segment without commercial breaks. So I immediately got suspicious, and my suspicion was met because she unfortunately failed the Cannonball drop. She essentially failed to let go and spent a long time trying to rebuild momentum, and she wasn't able to do it, and she ended up failing and going out. And one thing that's very clear is that the Cannonball drop is very much an obstacle where you can't afford to hesitate. You have to just let go at the apex of the swing at the end, and it just she just didn't do that. I don't know why. Maybe it was a mental thing, but that ended up costing her. She's not going to Vegas, which is surprising. And then, so this was one of those things where it's kind of, I guess, one of my frustrations with this episode, because this was, I would say I overall liked this episode. There's a few frustrating things. They did a preview for Jessie Graff where they were like, she's done it all, but she hasn't cleared a regional finals course yet. Watch her attempt to do that this time. And I thought that meant she was going to clear the regional finals course. And I kind of got a little annoyed by that because, it seems like the way they promote Jessie, they really seem to, overdo it sometimes. And, honestly, I made the mistake of, watching her run, watching the preview for next week's episode. But basically at the end of Dallas, I made the mistake of watching the preview for Miami, which actually I think kind of soured me a little bit even more on the Dallas episode now that I think about it. But they showed her on the Stair Hopper, and it's really? Come on. And so Jessie, I got asked if they're treating Jessie the way they used to treat Casey, and I'm going to say no, because with Jessie, with the over promoting, I feel like they do of Jessie. And just keep in mind, I love Jessie. I just feel like the editing does her no favors, the way they edit the show. Sometimes. And this was one of the examples where they just sort of overdo it. They tend to keep Jessie contained within her own episodes. Casey, the biggest problem with Casey is that they mentioned her all the time in all the episodes, regardless if she's actually competing or not. So they're not ruining Jessie for me or anything like that. I still, big fan of Jessie. I just feel like sometimes they overdo it, and they're not doing her any favors. But the next run they show was RJ Roman. He's a rock guitarist. I appreciate, this is the type of profiles I like. Showing an occupation or a hobby and kind of focusing around that. More stuff like that. Please, A&W. He ended up going to the Crazy Clocks, which does mean he moves on. And then, let's see, Jason Birdstorm failed the Cannonball drop, and Todd Bourgeois failed the Crazy Clocks. They both got fast forward. Then they did Eddie Stewart, and they I gotta mention this. So they had Lance Pecos and Michael Johnson and someone else, I'll get to that in a second, engage in the peck bouncing that Eddie Stewart does, the left right double, which I'm a big fan of. I'm a big fan of Team Mantis, definitely. Yeah, the bug Mantis. I'm not saying something else. Mantis. I think the whole left right double thing is hilarious that Eddie does. I love it. It's honestly, it's not even that hard to do. It's what, left right double. Yeah, see, I can do it with my flabby man, my fat pecs. But here's the thing. During in a weirdly comical moment, they asked Megan Martin if she can do the left right double, in which she responded, I can't and I won't. And let's be honest, let's not sugarcoat it. They were asking her to bounce her boobs, which is what? It's so for a show that's so family friendly, that's such a bizarre thing to do. And, like, you had, like, this weird thing where, like, I remember last year in Celebrity Ninja War, Akbar had that, you know, that tag team comment that, you know, maybe he EA by accident. But now you got this where there, you know, let's be honest here. Of all the top competitors, Megan, there's no real, I guess, I don't know if there's a way to say this without sounding super creepy. But I'm going to try to, like, say this in a respectful way. It is, you know, is a fact that if you look at Megan, of the top women, you know, she has a bit more, she has a larger bust than, like, some of the other women. So it's kind of weird that, like, when they're asking Megan to do this, it's very weird. It's a very weird thing. Because they're literally just asking her to jiggle her boobs. It's a bit more natural. It's a bit more culturally natural for a guy to do it because it's their pecs. And so, yeah. Anyway, unfortunately, Eddie Stewart went out on the Cannonball drop. That was very disappointing. And then they went straight into Devin Harrison, a.k.a. Dougie Fresh. And, like, they had this really sad, about his friend passing away in an accident. That sucks. I talked about with the Dallas thing that, like, I'm just not a fan of those type of profiles, and, like, I don't want to hear them. To be honest, like, as a viewer, like, I don't enjoy it. Like, it is not like one of those things where, like, oh, inspirational and stuff. And then he went out and failed the Cannonball drop also, and he was very sad about that. I felt bad for him, and, like, I don't want to feel bad, you know. Like I understand feeling bad because, like, he failed, but, like, you add that extra stuff, and it's like that doesn't help, you know. So yeah, I felt bad for both of them. A lot of Cannonball drop fails. And then they showed Ryan Stratus. And this is the other kind of frustrating thing with the editing. So they did this really cool profile piece with Brett Sims about how, him and Brett, they have the battle of the beards, loser has to shave. And then they started Ryan mid-run at the Slippery Summit, which is like the 5th obstacle, which is kind of annoying. So Ryan, I think, was the first person that they showed to actually grab the clocks correctly and with the inside, because you got a lot of people trying to do it on the outside and get it like this. Definitely seems like you got to grab it on the inside. Got to do this. Definitely seems like the better choice of the two. And he had he did the Stair Hopper perfectly, and he cleared. That was great. And for the life of me, I don't understand why they didn't show Brett Sims' run also. Because I guess I'll just say this now. Like, one of the frustrating things about this episode, just from a viewer perspective, is that you have this whole thing where, like, only 3 people cleared. One of them, you fast forward, and the other 2 were started mid-progress. So in this episode, there was actually 0 runs where I got to see all 10 obstacles be completed in order. And that is very frustrating to see, because I want at least one run where I see someone clear all the obstacles. And I think that is just kind of speaks to the problem of how long it takes to complete these courses sometimes, you know? The fastest time was 7:41. And I know with Daniel Gill, he finished another 4 minutes, but that's because I honestly believe his course was more in tune with being able to finish it that fast. You know, that Slippery Summit takes time. The ring turn takes time. You know, a lot of these obstacles, they take time. You know, Fallout, compared to last week, Fallout you can do in 4 swings of your body. So I think they need to kind of figure out, for the sake of TV, how quickly you can do this course. That's just my personal opinion. So anyway, then in fast forward segments, they had 3 people fail the Cannonball drop. These are all names that I recognize: Greg Manders, Jordan Brown, Eli Bell. Jordan Brown, I know, is known as the Flash. It sucks seeing those guys fail. I know from, like, National Ninja League stuff, I recognize those names, and yeah, unfortunate. Neil Craver, they showed him training with ice. I'm kind of surprised that, like, They didn't really mention the injury. I didn't really write that down. I felt like they didn't mention that enough, that he was gone last year because of I think it was shoulder injury. This was a weird one to watch because he felt they kept mentioning like he looked tired. Like they mentioned like he spent a long time with the ring turn. He was like shaking his head in disappointment, like looked tired, spent too much time. Trying to see 4:55 to the crazy clocks. It's not too crazy of a time. But yeah, it was very weird. He still made it to the crazy clocks. He's still moving on. That's good. And then Casey Shwookie got the commercial spot. Honestly, like, with all due respect to Casey, he is sort of the level of someone who, like, I'm fine with putting in a commercial slot if you have to do it. He ended up failing the crazy clocks. Then Kenny Nimatello. So he did this whole thing about I can't remember if it's son or daughter. I'm sorry. Basically, one of his kids got a kidney because of A&W, because of him appearing on A&W, which is really cool. And now he's trying to help other kids get kidneys, which is, again, really cool. One of the things that's really weird is that, like, during his run, Eisman kept saying, like, oh, the more time he spends on the course, the more exposure he's giving for kidney transplants. But, like, here's the thing. If memory serves me right, they didn't really show him in the qualifier episode, where the thing is he had two different shirts on for two different kids in the first and second episode, in the qualifiers and the finals. And then, like, for this run, they started him during the Slippery Summit, which is obstacle 5. And so there's sort of like this weird thing where Eisman's like, oh, the longer he's on the course, the more exposure he's giving these kids for kidney transplants. It's like, what would have really given him more exposure? If you had shown him completing the first 4 obstacles, because that's, that was actual time he was on the course. So it's sort of like, it's this weird, juxtaposition where it's like, oh, the longer he stays, the better, but also you cut out some of his run. It's a bit weird. But anyway, really cool is that he cleared, and he ended up getting the fastest time of the night. And, like, I mean, with all due respect to the guy, I don't think he's a name that, like, anyone would have expected going into this episode as being, like, being first place, let alone a clear, to be honest. But yeah, good for him. Good for him. But also, that's the other kind of weird thing about this is that, like, he's the last non-fast forward cleared, and there's still 1, 2, 3, 4 commercial breaks after that run. Very weird. Very weird. So Nico Long failed the Cannonball drop. Emily Dunham failed Slippery Slope. And Brett Slim's cleared, and I don't know why they didn't show that. Then you had Rachel Goldstein, who just got married. And then a big part of this segment was about her going to Jamie Ron's wedding. About the handstand thing, and, like, she may or may not have cleared, may not have beat him. Razor's Edge, there you go. So what's interesting is that when she ended up doing a split on the landing pad of the Razor's Edge, and so thank goodness she's flexible enough to do that. Otherwise, that might hurt. I can relate to times where I've done stuff like that. Took her 3 tries to do the warped wall, which was weird and surprising. But she did it, and that's good. And she made it to the crazy clocks, which is good for her. Good for her. Rachel's a good competitor. Scott Reuter failed, what is that, the ring turn? No, Razor's Edge, sorry. Razor's Edge. And this was a shocker. Kevin Carbone failed the Cannonball drop, and he closed his eyes on the obstacle, and, like, in his interview, they showed a brief clip of his interview. He was like, I don't know what happened. Like, I never done that before. I'm telling you, I think something about the Cannonball drop just got in these competitors' heads because it was new for them. It wasn't in the qualifier episode, so something happened there mentally. And then they showed Booty Cothran. I'm on the booty bag wagon. He made it to the crazy clocks. Yes, first time ever, moving on to Vegas. So glad about that. Morgan Wright, however, not moving on to Vegas, he surprisingly went out on the ring turn, and Doug Legg went out on the slippery step. It's like a slippery slope, slippery summit. One of those. I'm like, aww. So then they showed Drew Dressel. And this was like the one time they showed the clock of the top time, and they actually like faked you out. And because Drew surprisingly failed the Stair Hopper, and this is why I like the Stair Hopper, in that it is very much a technical obstacle. It's not pure strength. It's not like pure skill. If you blank on it, you can slip off. But it's also an obstacle that you can like take some risks of. Like with Kenny Nimatello, he skipped the bottom step completely, which was really cool. But like Drew, unfortunately, he just sort of slipped off, made a mistake. He seemed to be in good enough spirits because at the end of the day, the point of the regionals is just to move on to the next round. You don't necessarily have to clear. Obviously, it would have been nice because then he would have gotten money. But yeah, this fail would have been more surprising if this wasn't the run that they aired on YouTube ahead of time. And I just want to point out, because they put the Kenny Nimatello clock on the screen, they spoiled his run also on YouTube. And I don't understand, like, this is the second to last run in the episode, and that's the one that you put on YouTube as a spoiler? As a huge, huge spoiler? What are you thinking? And not to mention, there are probably some people who would watch this episode just to see Drew. Drew is on that level where, like, Drew is top tier in terms of audience attraction. Why would you spoil his run? It's like when they spoiled Jesse Graff on USA vs. World. Why would you spoil that ahead of time? You want to like tease something? That's fine. Don't show the entire run. And then we had Jesse Graff as the final run. They were really hyping the whole can she clear. She had a close call on Cannonball drop. That would have sucked if she went on Cannonball drop. She unfortunately slipped on the Stair Hopper almost right away, actually. It wasn't like she wiped out or anything. She just because of those gaps, she slipped right off. And so that teasing that they did for will she clear the regional final, it was just that. It was just a tease. So yeah, a bit of a weird way to end. And also, I guess, just kind of go back to the whole like editing thing. Like, Drew and Jesse, they had their run shown in full, and they made it to Obstacle 9. So there's no real reason why they couldn't have shown, and like Ryan or Kenny in full. And yeah, it's just one of those frustrating things. It's like, I just want to see a run. Like, let me see at least one full run. That's all I ask. But anyway, let's run through some stats. I'm running overtime anyway, so because unlike the A&W editors, I'm allowed to go overtime. So we had 32 competitors take on the course this time. We had 12 full runs, 3 runs that were shown mid-progress. Unfortunately, 2 of those were clears, and 15 fast forwards. So actually that means 2 people got skipped entirely, so that sucks. And all the clears were shown in some capacity. Those 3 clears were Kenny Nimatello in first place, Brett Sims, and Ryan Stratus. We then had 2 people fail the Stair Hopper in the form of Drew Dressel and Jesse Graff. We then had 9 people fail the Crazy Clocks in the form of Michael Johnson, Casey Shahoki, Todd Bourgeois, Nick Patel, Neil Craver, RJ Roman, Drew Henry, Booty Cothran, and Rachel Goldstein. And rounding out the top 15 is Rico Rivera, who failed the Salmon Ladder. And you may have noticed that 2 women were in the top 15, which means the women's rule did not have to be used, which is great news. And hopefully, with more female success, they will eventually abolish that rule because it is no longer necessary. And that is everything I have to say. So let's stop. So that's everything about the Miami Final that I felt overall good episode, but kind of frustrating in terms of editing and presentation. But Let me know what you think. Did you like the crazy clocks? Did you like the stair hopper? Did you like the editing? Were you surprised by Drew's fail, or like me, were you kind of spoiled and didn't really care? Were you surprised by Jesse's fail? Did you think she was going to clear? Let me know in the comments below to like any of those questions, or whatever your feelings are in general. And if you like what you see, make sure you subscribe. I do more coverage of A&W and Ninja Warrior related stuff all year round when I'm making videos. So until next time, I will be talking about the Indianapolis Finals, and I hope to see you there. See you later.